Thank you for staying with us on AM Live this Friday. I had promised my panelists occasion to comment on the whole 50 CAS's judgment and whether it now puts Musalia Mudavadi in the crosshairs, and then after that we can transition into the topic of discussion. But they've brought my attention to two things. Okay, one thing especially, and that is on page 8 of the Daily Nation, which we will get into as part of the discussion this morning. And given the front page headline is about politics of deceit and betrayal, Osoro quoted here as saying, "We used dirty tricks to beat Azimio pass finance bill." National Assembly Chief Whip says ruling coalition bribed opposition MPs to stay away from Parliament. You are as astounded as me. But before then, let's just quickly take a look. Before we get into the discussion, this one proper, let's take a look at that Star headline. I get your thoughts. I'll start with you, Nurdin. Does this, as an advocate, does that particular judgment on the position of the 50, the illegality, the unconstitutionality of those appointments, the 50 CASs, put Musalia Mudavadi and his Prime Cabinet Secretary office in the crosshairs?
You see, the beauty of having this constitution is that we tend to want to get interpretation every other new day. Now, courtesy of this judgment by the judges, it's a good thing. And I'm sure there is someone who will be cheeky enough and will go to court and seek the interpretation of the Constitutional Court on the legality of the position that the Prime Cabinet Secretary holds. That will be interesting because there are those of us who believe that seat doesn't need to be there, but there are those who believe it serves a purpose that A, they might have promised, B, suits some ego somewhere, and C, makes them manage their affairs better. But I believe a court case is somewhere around the corner on that issue, and the Constitutional and Human Rights Division will actually find themselves determining that case, and I waited to see. Because I was sure when this case was filed, the one for the CAS, I knew the judgment before it was even said, because it is unconstitutional. And I can dare tell them today, tomorrow, and even until kingdom comes. The same fate that met the BBI case is what will meet them wherever they go. And they have made an appeal, which is an exercise in futility. The Constitution as it is, unless they intend to amend the Constitution as it is, those seats are unconstitutional, and they'll remain to be such until an amendment is done to the Constitution.
Aha.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's see what the Court of Appeal decides. But why does it take so long? Because already there were the initial appointments, and there was a court, and the Court of Appeal was seized of the matter when former President Uhuru Kenyatta had the what, 20? Do you guys remember? 23, the initial. From then till today, we are still discussing the same issue. Why has it taken so long? You
see, the problem is the matter before the Court of Appeal came up courtesy of the Employment and Labor Relations. That's a different part of the judiciary, sorry, of the courts. So the stay that was put there actually is part and parcel of the problems that we have. But you do realize that there's a decision by Justice Mrima that those seats are unconstitutional. But I believe the fact that they have actually appealed, it brings a finality to these issues. So that when you get to the next election, those who actually are rejected by the people don't get promised that, you know what, I'll sort you somewhere. They know that they have been rejected, so they have to wait five years outside. We know it's cold. Some of them actually, they can't survive without being in those offices. They like just the extravagance, the sirens. They are addicted to such things. So I believe it will be good for this thing to get a finality, so that when you know you have gone home, just come chill with us. After 5 years, you can go strategize and go back. And if you get lucky, you get an office.
Today decided, I don't want peace. What violence? Benjamin, what do your friends call you? What's your nickname? Benja?
My nickname I'm referred to as Omwami himself.
Ayabasi Omwami himself. Your thoughts on this?
For starters, Olive, there was a headline you ran. I think it was on People's Daily. Sorry to drag you slightly behind. No problem. Especially on the salary increments.
Yes.
And there's something I feel you missed out, which is important for Kenyans to know. That on that particular headline, when you are running about how much the permanent secretaries will be making and so on, there's something you missed. What? That teachers are the biggest winners.
I read it.
It's important.
Benjamin, I read everything on
it's
this.
It's important that if we report, we report in finality and totality. Let's not skip it.
I did not. For the record, I did not.
Good stuff. There are big winners in this new bill by President Ruto. And as such, it's important that the country knows that the salary increment really targets the bottom coming up. On what you're asking
Benjamin,
about... On the question you're asking about the verdict of the CASS, it's important for Kenyans to know one thing. We have a president who really has the rule of law at heart. And he does not just talk it, he walks it also. When he was appointing the permanent secretaries, right? There was a court order. Somebody went to court, and he waited until the court pronounced itself before finally these people were appointed, vetted, and sworn into office. I don't think our president will act against the spirit of the courts. He is one man who is bent on following what the law says. He is one man who has the rule of law at heart, and I'm sure even on this matter of the CASS, he will listen to the court. The court has pronounced itself. But that doesn't mean that we in Kenya Kwanza have lost our right to go and appeal. We will still seek interpretation at a higher court, because this matter is not about individuals, as you want to put it. You know, some people once said a long time ago that more hands make light work. So if in his implementation of his manifesto to Kenyans, he is saying, hey, come on, I would like to have more hands. I would like to have David come on board. I would like to have Nordin come on board to help make the work lighter, to increase efficiency, to increase, to reduce the time taken to offer services to you, because Kenyans are demanding for better services, timely services. And if I'm saying, come on, I need some more hands to come and help me push this thing, what is the problem? And if the courts say it's illegal, we'll listen to the courts. The president will listen to the courts.
Your thoughts, David? Sorry, I'm trying to move us along because there's that Kahot Castoro, that one for Soro. David, your thoughts on this CAS issue? Does it put Musalia Mudavadi's office, Prime Cabinet Secretary, in jeopardy, in your view?
In my view, of course, I feel that it will definitely lead there. And it will not only cut the Prime Cabinet Secretary's office, Musalia, but it will also include his wife. Remember, he created some pseudo office for the wife, which is, of course, he said it is not state-funded, but we saw the coat of arms enshrined on the logo and everything of government. You know, everything that comes with government vehicles, there was a budget for it, and we feel like it is also part of the meat that is on the table for slashing. And I know somebody is going to go to court to seek for interpretation on exactly what his position is in the Constitution. But honestly, I feel his position is okay. I have no problem with it, because the president can give any cabinet secretary any title that he feels is within the law. Having an office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, I don't think it goes against the Constitution. There is no way a Constitution has said you should name cabinet secretaries like this, like that. No. So I feel the position for Prime Cabinet Secretary's office and his position is okay. The only problem that comes in is that when we have future governments where maybe it is a coalition, it can have a problem with the conflicting roles of the deputy president, because if you look at the roles of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, they're exactly the roles of the deputy president. And if you have a rogue deputy president, then you have also a rogue Prime Cabinet Secretary. You can have a dysfunctional government. And therefore, in administration, there should be a way that they should be aligned and put in law so that the roles are clear in law. Somebody campaigns and they know exactly this is my role. You don't campaign that you're telling your people that I'll be made a deputy president or a Prime Cabinet Secretary and my role will be this and that and that. Then after election, you find that your role has been given to somebody else. Then you feel that you cannot now you cannot execute and fulfill the promises that you gave your people. Then you begin having a government that is full of feuds, full of quarrels, because there is an exchange of roles. And therefore, I feel that there should be some court interpretation, legal interpretation, on exactly the position of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Personally, I don't have a problem with it, but I feel that it should be in law. And on this CISS things, this CAS ruling, I agree with the court. The law, the constitution is our friend. Politicians can never be our friend. Be it Raila Odinga, be it William Ruto. Those people, they're just people with in politics, these people are pursuing their selfish interests. There is nobody there fighting for anyone. Everybody is busy every morning pursuing their selfish interest first. After pursuing their selfish interest first, they go to the interest of their families. After the interest of their families, they go to their cronies. And that is how it goes. You find that the man who votes in the morning, wakes up at 5 in the morning to go and vote, is actually remembered at the very last, at the very tail end of everything.
Okay.
And therefore, I feel that we should have, make constitution our friend, that everything that they pronounce is what we take through the courts.
All right. On that note of everybody's just looking out for themselves, we will transition into the topic of conversation. And we asked the question, here it is, can Azimio convert public discontent into a winning hand? If so, how? So this is all posed on Twitter. Lots of views. Let me start here with PK Odhiambo, who says it will be messy, noisy, thoroughly unmitigated cowards to stay home. We the people, fearless, undeterred, and completely unrestrained, will prove to the oppressors that we are superior than all the arsenals they own. The polluted police force on the land must now feel our power. There was that soundbite of the guy who was saying police in Kisumu are the ones who protest. Did he say protest or something? Benjamin and David. It was a funny one. You can find it on the NTV Kenya YouTube channel. Alex, and speaking of arsenals, I'll ask, is Azimio like Arsenal? Do they always come so close to clinching the cup? Then at the end of the day, hearts are broken. The panelist, okay, so this guy, Alex, asks, where are the ladies? I'm here. Then when the economy was spiraling down the drain during the Fat Man stint, I assume he's referring to former President Uhuru Kenyatta, why didn't the pretentious Saba Saba fellows go to the streets? They're protesting against measures to mitigate against the already dire situation, with Uhuru the cause of the mess leading it. So, you know, interesting here. You talked of interests, David. Are these, is this Saba Saba less about liberating the people and more about political interests? Okay, let me see. Okay, so I will find the rest of the tweets here, but yes, so let me ask my panelists this morning before we take a look at this particular story that was penned by Roslyn Obala on Osoro, of Osoro, Silvana Osoro, the chief whip, Majority Chief Whip, saying we used dirty tricks to beat Azimio to pass the finance bill. Do you guys resonate with Saba Saba? I remember the tweet we looked at, Moses Kuria's tweet, and this happened 33 years ago. Nudin, do you resonate with the Saba Saba call to action?
You see, the beauty about it is I resonate with it courtesy of being born in the same month it's taking place, so I'm okay with that. That aside...
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. That aside, I do believe that the history behind Saba Saba is a good history, because those who fought that liberation at the time, that was the 7th of July 1990, it was a multi-party democracy, and that is what we enjoy today. Now, today's Saba Saba is more or less, we've been told, is against the punitive taxes and draconian laws that they feel might be sent to the National Assembly by the executive. Now, I do believe the opposition is doing their thing as the opposition. I don't understand why those who are in the executive, or rather those who feel, you know, there's this misconception that we are members of parliament, we are in government. They forget that there are 3 arms of government. They are also a government. That is why I don't understand when I see some rebel or renegade MPs from ODM saying, we've gone to government to seek development. You're an arm of government. That is executive. You appropriate the budget in parliament. They don't understand their functions. They need a crash course, that aside. So I believe today's...
You know, as you said earlier, vitu kwa ground. Kuna ideal situation na kuna vitu kwa ground.
You see, the problem is, when you listen to most of those members of parliament talk, the only thing they know an MP should be busy about is CDF, which I believe after the CAS thing, we need to go after that CDF. Because I don't believe that oversight and money go hand in hand. In as much as they talk about there's an independent committee, they present the names in parliament at the end of the day. So we'll have a discussion about that some other day. Now moving on.
MPs waende maandamano.
You see,
remember what happened in Mombasa?
Yes. You see, the sad reality is that today we'll see members of parliament from Azimio, some who never appeared in the House to debate, never appeared in the House when the hyper amendments were being proposed, never appeared in the House to vote. Now, we are being told today by an NTV journalist that there were those who were bribed. Some of us had prior information that they were being paid 1 million shillings at Serena the day before the voting. So the question is, so you'll avoid voting, get bribed. Osoro is just acting like, I don't know if you people know a song by Bobby Shmurda called The Hot Nigger, where he snitched on himself and the DA used the same song to arrest him. So Osoro is telling us exactly what happens in Parliament. But I'm not surprised, because the other house that left, there was a sugar report scandal where we were being told they were being bribed 10,000 shillings in the toilets. So are we surprised? We are not. This is what we see. And the sad reality is that the president is on record saying that members of parliament can never be bribed. And his majority whip just snitched on him. So at the end of the day, who is lying to who? Right. And that is the question we ask ourselves as Kenyans. If those who we think are there to protect our interests as members of parliament can be bought penny, silver or gold, so what happens to me? And today, as they go for this, they call it liberation. So this is against the taxes and everything. It's a beautiful thing, because at the end of the day, that is the only recourse they feel they have. Now, two things will happen today. There will be ultimatums, there will be demands, and it will bring about a new wave of tear gas Thursday or Machozi Wednesday or Friday or whatever. And then we'll get a new photo, because going back to the history of Saba Saba, the organizers like Raila, Rubia, Haminwa, Gitobu never made it to Kamukunji grounds. So I hope today he makes it, because they were arrested and detained under Moi. And that's why we only have a photo of Orengo and Shikuku on that pickup. That's history people need to understand. Yes. So as we are moving forward, I believe whatever they'll say, we'll gauge whatever they say today, whether it holds any water. But it will be very sad to see the same members of parliament being given a platform. Those who actually abdicated their duty, never participated in the House, coming to try to rally us and try to charge the ground for you to actually have disobey certain decisions the executive is trying to have, while they failed on their duties. Okay. So we have to come to a point where we as citizens who vote for these members of parliament understand that if they don't rise up to the occasion, recall these people. Because they keep saying, or it is said, if you elect a clown, expect a circus. Is there going to be a circus? Let's wait and see.
All right. I saw this news alert yesterday, capital breaking news. Raila Odinga says Kamkunji protest rally still on. Issues 10-day ultimatum for Ruto to drop CAS nominees, fixed cost of living. And I read it out because now we have Advice Mundalo in studio. And I know you wanted to comment on this whole CAS thing. It's what's graced the front page of the Star. So I will allow you to comment on this demand for dropping CAS nominees. I know your issue, part of when we chatted on phone, you were saying, you know, this is disenfranchising the youth. But then I was asking you which youth? Evans Kidero, Samuel Tunai, which one?
Good morning, Olive. You have chosen to start from a serious war front, I can see.
I'm just taking my cue from Nudi.
Yeah, just yeah, my comment about the CAS nominees was actually that among the nominees that have been appointed by the president, that is the high-ranking nominees. If we have a place where we have the largest chunk of young people is there at that CAS, that is where we have the Itumbis of this world, that is where we have the Sudis, that is where we have basically most of the young people who participated in campaigns are at that CAS position. And that is why, in my view, I feel like government is not giving very good priority to that position, because the people who are there are not a very big priority in the first place. So I feel, in as much as, yes, we have legal issues here and there, but the concentration should not be lost, because at the end of the day, that position still needs to be there. If for anything, then for the sake of providing opportunities for young people to be able to thrive and for them to be able to have a learning curve in government. Because if we have to look for experience for them to be PSS and CSS, then we need a place where people can be actually nurtured. And I tend to believe the position of the assistant minister, which is now called the CAS, is more or less the best position that can be able to grow young people. So somehow it must be able to come back to play. But moving forward to what my brother has just been talking about, the Saba Saba rally and what is expected of it, I think for me, Saba Saba was actually very weighty somewhere in the past. But as time moves on, it continues to become a spent political cartridge, where it has a lot of optics. It will get the newspaper headlines every time it has to happen. But then after it happens, there is actually very little impact after it. It continues just being a political circus. It is something to get the headlines, because today I don't really expect much from what will happen in, there's been promises of the town will be brought to a standstill and all these. But I don't really expect much away from the headlines, because what we are lacking now is the politics of impact. Today, we saw what happened in the finance bill. And as he rightfully put, members of parliament from the Azimio side did not actually, most of them did not attend. And last, you remember when I was here last, Olive, I talked about the variation in numbers. Because if this is something that is supposed to be very contagious, we are supposed to have a close tie. The difference should be about 15 MPs or 10. That way I can buy the narrative that people have been bought. But when then the variation is more than double, then it just points to an opposition that is more serious on the political optics and not very serious on impact. One person, Okia Omtata, went to court and there was impact on the finance bill. There was real impact on the finance bill. That was just one person. He did not do any protest. He did not organize any demonstrations, but there was impact. But then what we continue having, like now what we are going to have in Saba Saba, is purely political optics, purely politics. There is no, how will the cost, which part of the cost of living is going to reduce because of the Kamukunji rally today? I think maybe Oyola is here, he'll explain to me. Because most of what we are now doing, unfortunately, as Azimio, is full-blown politics. Full-blown politics that has actually no real impact to the common mwananchi. And what I do not agree with is my brother has just described politics as it ought to be, not politics as it is, where he's saying parliamentarians are not even supposed to have CDF. But politics as it is today in Kenya, the role of parliamentarians according to the voter might be very different from the role of parliamentarians according to the elite and the constitution per se. So sometimes we are the ones who are putting even our parliamentarians in very precarious situations, where they have to balance between their real role constitutionally and their role according to the people.
Okay.
Yeah, just like the way Azimio is balancing between their role according to the people and their role according to the constitution. Because according to the reality is that they should be able to be providing checks and balances that have impact to the people.
All
yeah,
right.
Which include things that can be able to have an impact, like can we recall the finance bill and such kind of things. But the Kamukunji rally and whatever, those are purely political optics. That is their role according to what their followers believe.
All right. Speaking of balancing, I had made a comparison to Arsenal. And this is one of my favorite memes where Arsenal is concerned. And their comparisons to be drawn. David, they get our hopes up, they get to the top. We are like Arsenal is top of the table. And then Kidogo, when it comes time. Your thoughts, David?
When you compare Arsenal and Azimio, personally, I'm not a football fan, but I would not use
it's
Arsenal.
It's funny because Raila is a supporter of Arsenal, isn't it?
I will actually not use Arsenal.
Runs in the blood.
I'll use this men. You know, men, sometimes when you see a beautiful lady, you use all the pompous words, you can describe yourself, how active you are, and all those other things. And finally, when the rubber meets the road, there's a lot of regrets. That aside, I would invite Mundalo to go to page 8 because he said that nobody was paid. He's behind. His majority whip confessed that they actually bought people to stay away.
Oh gosh, you know, I have been saying Roslyn Bala, and I'm seeing the article is actually by Ruth Muller. Is it? Or am I reading my own things?
Ruth Mbula, yeah, by Ruth Mbula. Yeah, so we can now authoritatively say, because a majority whip is actually almost like is the official voice of government in parliament. We cannot say that is propaganda. That is true that the government did that, unless somebody will come from higher ranks to demystify that kind of say. On this Saba Saba thing, I agree with Nordin, and I agree with Mundalo that Saba Saba has a very beautiful history. And the history of Saba Saba, as we all know, has been revolutionary. And so many other things have come out from Saba Saba since the time that it started, that now they are commemorating the 33rd anniversary. And the agenda or the objective of Saba Saba, it was then, is not the same as now. Then it was against the freedom and political freedom and you know, multi-party democracy and all those other things that started that time. But as time goes by, you realize that political preferences and circumstances change with time. So sometimes when I see that the Azimio chief are threatening William Ruto with Saba Saba, I see lack of tact and the reality. Maybe because of by the time they were fighting, they were in Saba Saba struggling for many changes in government. Majority of them were not well off in money. I mean, they didn't have a lot of financial or a lot of influence in terms of resources. So they were still closer to the people. They knew exactly what people wanted then. But over time, they have accumulated much wealth. In fact, in Kenya is where we have very rich opposition leaders, which is, and you ask yourself, if these people are opposition leaders, power as it works across the world is that the state cannot allow an opposition leader to thrive in resource accumulation. There is no example of a very rich opposition leader in the world. But in Kenya, we do have that. In fact, if you look at Pakistan, Pakistan has got almost the same situation we are in as a country, that there is a popular opposition leader in the name of Karim Khan, who has been fighting against, at one time he was a prime minister like Raila Odinga. Then over time he left the position. And now he's giving the Pakistani government a hell of work. He goes to the military camp and causes all those kind of havoc. Then you realize that over time the struggle begins to change with the preferences of the people. And sometimes when I look at the Azimio and the opposition leaders in Kenya, I see a clear lack of tact. It is true that the economy is not doing very well, and there is a high cost of living. All of us know, except a few people in government, like a few friends of ours here. They don't feel it. Undalo, I think, is in a very good... Wandalo is in government. He doesn't feel it exactly as it is.
Mundalo is looking at you from the top of his spectacles.
No, Mundalo is my neighbor. I know he's not yet in government. He will be one day. And when you look at the cost of living, we all agree that the cost of living is too high. The reality is that as it is today, it is only the government that can be able to make changes to policies that can be able to make food available to people and certain things affordable. But if you look at the global, you know, when you look at Kenya, you don't look at it from the village perspective. You look at Kenya as a state, over 200 other states across the world. What exactly is going on in the world? Every country is struggling with its own economy. In fact, even powerful countries like Germany. I saw the other day that Germany is also struggling with high cost of living. France has been having protests. In fact, I think it was last week, the French government has faced a serious protest that has been compared with the French Revolution that happened some times back. Because, of course, that was because of police brutality and racism. But across the world, there is a jittery generation. There is an impatient generation. These millennials that are born post-1980s, they are very impatient people. They are very impatient people. And their impatience, if you come up with old strategies like Saba Saba, you will not be able to take them with you.
Really?
You cannot take them with you.
I thought that would work in Azimio's favor.
You know, Azimio is using Saba Saba.
Can I ask you to hold that thought, please?
Yes.
So that we can take a break.
All right.
We come back, you conclude that thought. Then we get from Omwami himself. It's Omwami, yeah? Himself. His thoughts on whether or not the mother, what has been promised to be the mother of all rallies, itakuwa hewa moto.
My shirt, a toss of lavender and a world of freshness.
Wash your clothes with Toss Lavender to leave your clothes with a lasting, irresistible freshness.
As a mother, I have to do my duties in the house. It forces me to send her to the river because I have no alternative.
Piaora okber, ler bedoko ler. Otuo nikech piaora. Otuo okadhi school japuonj chunya chandore.
If children had water close by, they won't be sick, they won't be distracted because the water is clean.
Are you a Kenyan youth ready to unlock your true potential? Join us on the 14th and 15th of July 2023 at the University of Nairobi for the Skill Up Africa 2023 as we mark World Youth Skills Day and get the chance to gain insight on the skills that will shape your future and unlock your potential. Register now for free entry at kenyabuzz.com or call 0724 661 440 to explore 2 days of transformative experiences, empowering dialogues, and invaluable networking opportunities. Skill Up Africa 2023, unlocking the potential of Kenyan youth through skills development.
No bunga pagi pendene lace the mystery. No bunga to browse on flick the mystery. No bunga me gonna next week the mystery.
Only on the Trend at 10 p.m.
The Trend in association with Showmax.
Nairobi is becoming a very dangerous place.
Mnajua kuna mtu atatoka hapa kabla nione ganji eh?
Hata afadhali tuichome.
Takuangusha hapa hivi sahi.
Jina langu ni Gilbert Mugire. Mimi ndio mhariri msimamizi wa gazeti la Taifa Leo. Nawaalika nyote kwa maadhimisho ya sikukuu ya Kiswahili duniani ambayo tutaandaa huko Cummins Hotel. Kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo kuna mengi ambayo tumewaandalia. Tumewatengea kurasa 4 za picha na makala maalum ambayo yataadhimisha hiyo siku. Na kwenye runinga ya NTV kuna pia matangazo mengi ambayo tumewaandalia na tutapeperusha moja kwa moja. Kwa hiyo siku nyote mnakaribishwa. Nakumbuka Nation Media Group ndiyo kitovu cha lugha ya Kiswahili Afrika na bara nzima kwa ujumla.
And I would not mind if my pastor also doubled up as a mechanic.
Imagine going to get your car kwa mech, alafu anakuelezea zile vitu ametengeneza. Tumebadilisha brake pads, spark plugs pia tumeweka mpya. na nimeopea capulator. Ukiambiwa hii dawa ni ya kichwa itafanya uche kumona kichwa, right? Inajuaje mahali kichwa iko? Like, okay, sorry. nimeuliza vilayman sana. Nimeuliza vilayman sana. Azin ati ukimeza painkiller inajuaje unaumwa na mguu?
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to AM Live. Thank you for staying with us. And I spy with my little eye a news alert that reads, roadblocks erected on roads to State House, Nairobi, Kisumu, Nakuru, as security patrols intensified ahead of Raila rally. And the question this brings up for me is that, you know, the police response, could the police response be the one to determine whether this will be the mother of all rallies or not? Anyway, but first, you made the point that this is an impatient generation. And I would think that would work in Azimio's favor, because what we're asking this morning for those just joining us is, can Azimio convert the public discontent over the punitive taxes, in quotes, imposed by the Kenya Kwanza regime into a winning hand?
It is true that the taxes appear punitive. It depends on where somebody stands. And my position still is, stands on this thing of Saba Saba, that Saba Saba was a beautiful idea. It outlived its purpose. Sometimes when you have a mug for uji, you don't carry it along and begin taking wine with it. Saba Saba was a very beautiful mug in the 90s. And it served its purpose by bringing multipartism and all those freedom.
But I'm looking at the examples that were given. Was you talking about Paris? Was it you, or was it about Paris? It was you. Yeah, but given those examples,
I'm actually heading there. It outlived its purpose by then. If you look at what people have, what we have today, the struggle for this generation is a bit different. In fact, we have a generation today that worship dictators and people who appear to be tough and thieves and murderers. This is the kind of people that we have. Today's voter, especially this below 40, they value no morality at all. Just like Niccolo Machiavelli said in the book of The Prince, that politics has no morality. And I agree with the current generation, there is nothing like morality. If you have a good person like my friend here, or Mwami himself, and you take him with Mike Sonko, for example, you know, a very educated man with a very good suit, well-exposed, well-traveled, you know, proper English, you know this guy will make very good policies. Then you take somebody like Mike Sonko, for example, Mike Sonko in quotes, and you give people an opportunity to elect each one, either of this one. They will not go to Omwami himself. They will elect some clown that appear to be out of touch with everything. And therefore, I still stand on that Saba Saba was a good idea in the 90s, but it has outlived its purpose. The current generation do not want those old narratives. And the greatest disadvantage or undoing of Azimio all the time is that there is this hangover of old memories, or, you know, old spirit. There is an hangover of old memories. People have held to them. They don't want to leave them. Even when you tell them that today, people don't want to listen to those histories. Nobody would want to know that which person in the 70s or 90s did this and that. People would want to see what exactly is happening right now, and who has the money. And as I finish on the French thing, Baba is aware that there is a great discontent. I know Baba is even briefed by the national intelligence itself that this thing, it must go to a certain limit. It must not go beyond. And that's why you see when he said, there's going to Saba Saba and protest, then he has put a caveat emptor that we are giving government 10-day notice to improve cost of living and to withdraw CSS. Which kind of caveat emptor is that?
What do you mean, which kind?
Of course, the court has said the CSS are unconstitutional. So how is the president withdrawing them again?
Okay. All right. I know you had a quick rejoinder before Benja comes in.
Yes. You know, two things from just what he said. I don't believe just because it happened in 1990, we can't have Saba Saba today. just because it was back in the day. You see, the problem is if Azimio packages this Saba Saba today in a better format, but if he comes out today, Fungua Sava, Sijui Nini, that one he loses touch. Believe you me, if he comes today and from today moving forward, it's more or less people-centric as opposed to selfish political gains. Believe you me, that thing will hit. Okay. It will become like a fireball from all over the country because the noises out there, people are tired, people are hungry, people are disillusioned. People expected certain promises that they were being told on top of vehicles that were more or less lies. And we have to be honest with one another. Let's not be calling them our promises. They were lies. And so people have gotten to the realization that, you know what, whatever they promised X, they're giving me Y. And you can't prescribe X and give me Y as the antidote. It can't work. Okay. Moving on to what he said about history, I kindly disagree with that. History is very important. You cannot say that because we are this young, we don't need to know history. Believe you me, history tells us where we are from and where we are going to. Because without history, we wouldn't know that the people who colonized us stole our ABCD and we are demanding them. Remember when there was a coronation, Africans were saying, better that diamond, that whatever belongs to Africa. How do you know that? It's part of history. So we cannot discard our history just because we are a young generation. It's more or less, it's important. It teaches us where we are coming from. A good example is multi-party that we're enjoying. Courtesy of those who were detained, others lost their lives. So it's very important for us to learn history. There's this notion from those there's this certain wave of politics that tells people avoid history because their history is tainted. So they don't want you to know the history that they are part and parcel of because they're trying to recreate a new one. All right. So we have to focus on the real issues at the end of the day. Okay, so I'm reading the non-verbal communication from Advice and Benjamin. They're like, yes, we are not. Anyway, Benjamin Omwami himself, you know, when Raila Odinga has been saying we are going back to the people because our MPs have been captured, the KK government, their supporters had sought to paint him as a madman in the market. Like he is just, the ramblings, where is the proof, you know? And when things don't go your way, you always claim Kimbebiwo. But when you look at the story by Ruth Mbula, and Silvana Sosoro is quoted as saying, I had to look for ways by hook or by crook to get it through. I had to manipulate systems. I looked for ways to get the opposition MPs to play our tune. I conspired with the opposition MPs and got some of them to absent themselves from the House so that I could get the numbers. Some were sponsored to go abroad, while others were bribed to feign illness. Omwami himself.
Olive.
Is this just how the game is played, or?
First off, any story has three sides, right? Your side, my side, and the truth. This publication here is your side. That is Daily Nation. And even this,
it is not our side. You know what?
It is
not our side.
Ruth Mbula's side.
It is not Ruth Mbula's side.
She goes ahead and says,
she has quoted. She has, and I mean, given it is published and we have editors with integrity, I will give them every benefit of the doubt that this is indeed what Silvana Osoro said.
They even go ahead and say, although the nation could not independently confirm Mr. Osoro's claims. I think you've missed that bit. There's something that says that.
Yeah, I've seen it. No, I've read it.
Anyway, that said and done, Oliver, Article 1 of our Constitution gives people, articulates the sovereignty of the people.
Oh, sorry, given you're telling me I missed parts, there's a part that is juicy. Speaking during a UDA recruitment drive in Kitutu Chache South constituency, the MP also said that the government will use all means to ensure that the courts do not overturn the bill.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that, Oliver. Article 1 sets the sovereignty of the people. Either we can practice our powers directly or through elected leaders, right? And these Azimio MPs are representing the interests of their people from their constituencies. And if, by any means, it is even slightly true that they were bribed, then they really denied their people the opportunity to be properly represented in Parliament during a crucial bill. And that negates their right to even go to the streets today and say, this government has passed a law that is punitive to Kenyans, because the only place the people who voted for the Azimio MPs have to voice their dissatisfaction against the bill or their support for the bill is in Parliament, where they send people to represent them in Parliament. And these leaders reach Parliament and they negate that particular power. And if it's true, I don't want to say it's true or not. I'm not confirming the publication here, because I am yet to confirm. These MPs let their people down by accepting a bribe. I don't think it happened. This is Mr. Honorable Osoro's opinion, and I will not go so much into it, because the leaders...
Not so much his confession.
You are sensational.
I am not sensationalizing
it.
No, benefit of the doubt. These are his own words. In his own words, how is that no opinion?
I'm just saying, in his own words, not the Kenyan government. Yes. Not the government.
No, he as a
does he have his own money?
No, because he says here, let me ask you, I am the government chief whip.
Yes.
I am the chief whip of the government. The bill that is being debated, is that before it is presented in Parliament, and before anyone else sets eyes on me, it first comes to my desk. We are the ones who draft these bills. If it gets to the floor and is voted down, the position of Osoro is gone. I cannot allow that to happen. If it is voted down, my position as chief whip could be taken away.
Olive, that bill, as my brother Advice rightfully said, that bill was overwhelmingly voted
So he was
for
acting as chief whip. Chief whip of who?
He's the chief whip in the National Assembly for the government.
Yes.
But the bill we are discussing that was passed in Parliament was passed by a number double against those people who are voting against it. You know, and it's not the first time. It's not the first time Parliament has outvoted the opposition. When the Speaker of Parliament was being elected, the opposition also had their candidate. They were outvoted. Were they bought? I don't think government can continue, can afford buying members of Parliament on every pertinent issue that comes up in Parliament. So we all agree that we outnumbered these people in Parliament. Whether there was a dirty trick that was used or not, these guys are outnumbered. Some of them even boycotted coming to Parliament to vote for that bill. Okay? And none of the members from Azimio has confirmed that I received a bribe. It's Osoro who's only saying we gave. You know, maybe to whip emotion and maybe to deflect a certain narrative.
Advice, let Advice Mudalo come in. Advice, the last paragraph I'll read from this particular article by Ruth Mbula is, he's quoted as saying, although we used crooked means to pass the bill, it is not really very bad for the commoners. It hurts those who are employed a little bit, but in general, it is a good bill.
I think, Olive, first of all, I like this, the back and forth here. But we must be able to understand that the passing of the finance bill is purely a political process. And the government is led from a political perspective. That's why the head of is the president. So I can not deny or confirm what Osoro is saying here. But what I can be able to talk about is tact in passing things politically. Now, what Osoro is speaking about is how they were able to actually maneuver and ensure that the bill passes. Remember, that is the first job of Silvanus Osoro. His job is to ensure that what comes from the executive is able to have its way in Parliament. And then we have two sides of this story. We have the story where we want to think about how government is bribing and using crooked means to pass the finance bill. But we are not looking at the perspective of which, how is the opposition being very instrumental in ensuring that its will comes to pass in Parliament. What was the role of the alternative of Silvanus Osoro, who is the minority whip? What was the minority whip doing to ensure that what Osoro wants does not come through? Because this was purely a political process. To the extent that your members as Azimio can be able to feign sickness, to the extent that they can be able to be called and some gimmicks can be played. What does that show us about the reality of the seriousness the opposition has in just ensuring that this government has checks and balances? So before we're able to even rush and say, look here, this government is bribing people, can we also look at the other side of the coin and say, how serious is the opposition in actually playing its crucial role in all this? Because every story, as someone said, has two sides to it. So to me, this political process points to the reality of the seriousness government had in ensuring that the finance bill passes. And then it also shows us the reality of how unserious opposition was in ensuring that the finance bill does not pass. So somebody lacked strategy and tact somewhere. And that's why I disagree that you fail to have strategy and tact where it matters. Then you come to put Kenyans on the street. Because where it mattered about the finance bill and the cost of living was in parliament. That is where we needed opposition tact 100%. When you don't do the right thing there, then you say now want to put Kenyans on the street. I somehow fail to understand there.
Is so it's about the same thing that happened with the presidential election?
You know, Oliver, I have spoken on that matter severally. And I'm asking,
is it demonstrative of a pattern?
And I am actually answering you, Oliver. Mm-hmm. You and me know that I sat on the campaign secretariat of the Azimio campaign. And not just me, but many others have talked about the lack of strategy and tact. We have talked about how at some point, everyone could be able to see that we are heading the wrong direction. But we failed to just swallow that bitter pill and get ourselves organized. And the problem has always been that every time Azimio is in a hole, it refuses to accept that we are in a hole, but it keeps pointing fingers at the other people. Like here, we want to really look at how Osoro bribed people and how the dirty tricks were used. We don't want to look at why were our MPs bribed. We don't want to look at how come our MPs feigned sickness. That is the problem that has always been there and bedeviled Azimio. Azimio does not like looking at itself and correcting the ills within Azimio. And that's why anytime you talk the way I'm talking, they say you have been bought by Kenya Kwanza. Yes. It is always so easy for anyone to be labeled. Instead of us facing our reality, we face we look for the quickest solution to mudsling somebody. Because we should be asking ourselves, Oliver Azimio, why did Esther Passaris vote the way she did and spoke the way she did? Instead of calling Esther and getting her view and getting to understand where she's coming from, the quickest thing is to mudsling her and say she was bought and call her Kenya Kwanza. That is the problem that is there in Azimio. Strategy and tact is just not there. And where I agree with my brother Oyola when he talked about history, I think Nurdin did not get him. He did not say that history is not important. Mm-hmm. But he said the use of history as a political strategy must change.
Yes.
Because what we do in Azimio is to use history as a political strategy. Now, when you are using history as a political strategy, you must be very careful. Today, when you go down these streets, Oliver, I can assure you, stop these millennials. In fact, I call them decennials. You know, the people who were born in 2000 are now old enough. They walk around the streets of Nairobi. Stop them here with earphones and ask them, what exactly does Saba Saba mean? Ask them what exactly. You know, they do not resonate. And that's where now we lose, we lose it as a movement. Because at the end of the day, politics sometimes is not just about what is realistic. It is also about what is it that you can make people believe is realistic. And that is where strategy and tact comes in. Because if you are telling the people, remember these are generations, these are thinking generation. And that's why even on this panel, this is the same, when we talk about the generation, Olive, it's not about the people out there. Even this panel today is that same generation. It is a thinking generation. And you can clearly see that Azimio has lost it even on this panel. Because the thinking generation must be able to see an end game. And that's why everyone is saying the cost of living is high. Yeah? Even my brother Nuruddin is saying, it's true the cost of living is high. Everything is not working, maybe. The government is not necessarily doing the right thing. But the question is, okay, as Azimio, what is the alternative and what is the end game? And he's refusing to accept that telling them to open the server as a solution to this country. Because this generation today is a thinking generation and it knows no server will be opened. We are aware that no server will be opened. So that cannot be a political strategy to win this generation. And that is where the problem is.
In fact, Nuruddin, David, let me allow Nuruddin to comment at this point. If it is indeed true that Raila Odinga has lost control of his own members of parliament, how can we then expect him to convert this public discontent into anything?
You see, the beauty about that story from Osoro it reminds me of his words when this finance bill was being presented. He said the government never loses. The government will never lose. So I can't put this past him, any trick that he's talking about. That being said, because remember we've had a government before under President Uhuru, and we used to see the tyranny of numbers, right? Where draconian laws, the 21 laws that were termed unconstitutional, that were passed, one among them is a security bill, you remember it. So at the end of the day, it's part and parcel of whatever he's saying is true. And I've quoted a story where I told you where the sugar report where they were bribed 10,000 shillings when they were accusing Fatuma Gedi in the last August House. So at the end of the day, I do believe, you see, Raila finds himself in the same waters. If you look at his political history or journey, he's always had those who use him and then they get to a certain point and turn left or right. The reason for doing that, only he knows, or he should do some reflection and understand why some people he always has people who he'll start with in the journey, they'll get a ticket in ODM, they'll become member of parliament and they'll turn. And it's not the first time. And whatever we're seeing the Minister for Luo Nyanza, ICT, doing at his offices at the end of the it's nothing new because it has been used before during the Moi regime. So he just needs to understand why his lieutenants get to a point where they use him and run away. But that goes down to the political hygiene that we have as a country. My brother here, I hear he calls himself still Azimio. I don't know how true that is, courtesy of the fact that their own party has issues. We don't know which is Azimio, which is Kenya Kwanza.
Bado hawaja vacate legally.
No, listen. Their side of the party claims to be working with Kenya Kwanza.
Maybe philosophically.
There's an agreement with Kenya Kwanza. You go to the registered political parties, there is no written memorandum that is registered there. Now, you find yourselves in weird waters because their side of the party says that they want the former president to relinquish his role as the party leader. And they quote the Retirement Benefits Act. Sorry, the act on the president, the benefits. So at the end of the day, we go back straight and we look at issues where, because I hear there's a case being filed courtesy of the former president where they need constitutional interpretation in that if I retire as a former president, do my political rights in the constitution, are they abdicated? That is an issue for them to understand, and only them will get to know. But what we see today is, like I rightfully told you, he'll find himself at the podium, Raila Odinga, and I saw the other time they were in Kamukunji, Selassie saying how they were tricked, and he himself was not even in the house. And then it's not just him, it's a number of members of parliament. And in as much as we say that it's political and whatnot, where do we draw the line as a people? Because you see, the term MP, it means the member of parliament is more or less a representative. So if they are going to be bribed, in as much as we are going to blame Raila, okay, we are blaming him that his lieutenants always abandon him. So when do I get to start also taking the flak for electing a certain individual? Because right now, like I rightfully told you, we have members of parliament from ODM who subscribed to ODM and went for a nomination and became members of parliament. And now don't subscribe to the same, but are working with the government of the day to bring about development. So we ask ourselves, they say they are still in ODM, all right? Because if they say they are not, then one thing needs to happen. They need to go and seek fresh mandate, which they can't because they know why, all right? Now, where do we draw the line between political dishonesty and reality? Because we also need to have a line. Because right now we also have Gathoni wa Mushomba, who's also having her own battles because she's seen as a rebel. Now, where do we draw a line between what the party wants and what your people want? Because we also have to have a line. We just can't keep saying that the government never loses. What if the government is trying to legislate a law that every Kenyan must lose one arm? Does it pass? Because the government never loses? Where do you as a member of, we need to understand, where do you as a member of parliament draw a line? Like, yes, there's a party position, there's a party line. You're my party leader. There's this old phrase, respect the party leader. It's best in ODM. Respect your party leader. Where do you draw the line between your party leader, your party, and the interest of your people? I.e. people-centric laws. We need to understand that. So that once we understand that, we get to understand who is there for me, who is there for tumbocracy. Because you also have to be honest. Most members of parliament are there for their stomach. this nonsense of development is a lie. There's no development that we're going to look for. It's a lie. It's more or less how I have a loan I'm financing. Nitamaliza je loan. Niko na mortgage. Niko na car grant. We have to be honest with one another, because if we sit here and we massage them, we're not solving anything. Because at the end of the day, how do we draw the line? Because we have to draw the line. And once we draw the line, then we bring about the issue of recall. Okay. The day we recall the first clown is the day we start solving the issues in this country.
Okay.
Until then, we'll have clowns and we'll enjoy a circus the entire time they're in that house.
All right. I want us to conclude the conversation in about a minute each. David, what in your view, because advice ametuambia more or less, if I can paraphrase using the president's famous campaign line of kuna upungufu ya wajinga Kenya. What is the end game in your view? Is this really about, because you guys have said this cannot be about the CASs, the courts have already ruled about the CASs. Is this about the punitive taxes? Because it's not the first time you've been told mother of all rallies. Remember, there was a march to State House that was promised. Nothing really much came out of it apart from the bipartisan talks, which now Azimio has backed out of. In your view, is a repeal of the Finance Act the end game?
The repeal of our Finance Act is not the end game. I will still agree with what my friends have said, especially what Mundalo has said there. In fact, to me, Azimio, the problem of Azimio is not in William Ruto, it is not in anybody else. And sometimes when I see people even blame William Ruto for having won elections, and ask them, when he was paying his nomination fee to IBC to go and vie for presidency, what did he want? You expected him to go and pay for nomination fee to fail. He went there to win, and he won through all means possible. When you go to an election, sometimes even when you want a beautiful lady, the things that you tell her must not be true. They must not be true. The end game is that you have finally assumed as your own. And when you go to an election, the purpose is to win an election. The biggest challenge that sometimes we grapple with in Azimio is a lack of accepting the new ideas, especially from newer, younger guys. Well, sometimes when you give your idea, like what Mundalo has said, you begin being branded as a mole, you've been bought by what, and you realize even the people who are serving the current government, majority of them were on the side of Orange Democratic Movement. The most important thing that I felt was sensible enough that ODM could have done, and Azimio, is that after elections, they could have asked themselves, why exactly what exactly made us lose elections? They sit on the conferences, do a lot of surgery on themselves, you change party leadership. How can you have a party, a political party, second largest in the country in the name of Orange Democratic Movement, and you have the same people serving it since it was formed? Nobody changes position, you have not changed executive director, you have not changed what is party leadership, and you keep on losing election every time you're losing on your numbers.
All right.
It's difficult.
Your last comments.
Olive, I want to say that even the best dancers must know when to exit a stage. And I think without meaning any offense to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, he has danced so well. He is one of those people who helped this country get a new constitution. But it's time he stopped dancing and paved way for new dancers who are dancing better than him. That said, you realize that the President Ruto, is still in line with the promises he made to Kenyans. Okay. He's still working so hard to improve the economy. Agriculture, he has
I will have to stop you there because Nangalia Mda and I'm really time bad. 30 seconds, Nurdin. Is it as depicted by David advice that Azimio have their heads buried in the sand?
Well, you see, the day they align their interests with those of the people is when whatever they want to channel or move will actually make sense. Until then, if it is Mambo ya Saba and what have you, they'll always have a blockage. But if they align with the interests, the economy, the issues people are going through, the plights of the people, believe you me, it will become a movement that they themselves won't even envision.
All right, advice, your last words?
I just want to say that just because Silvana Osoro said governments don't lose, it doesn't mean you take it like Bible truth. Government has just lost the CAS issue. Government has lost the finance bill in court. Government lost the BBI. So let's not take leaders' words to mean as though they are now Bible truths. And then somehow Jubilee Matters have come on board here from nowhere without even being prompted by anybody. But what I would want to say is Jubilee as a party is in Azimio. And what we have right now is that we have filed and given notice to the Azimio coalition that we want to exit the coalition. So until then, that party is still in Azimio, and we'll keep speaking as Azimio and saying the truth and saying what needs to be corrected.
Right.
Lastly, I just want to say, let us have practical solutions to this country. Let us not continue taking the country through a lot of politicking sometimes that is extremely unnecessary and just wasting the time, especially of the young people of this country. Let's approach it from a very practical perspective. I think if I was Oyola, I would have used the example of a beautiful girl, but because I'm not very well conversant with the issues of beautiful girls, I will let Oyola continue using those examples.
All right.
I
want to thank you guys for taking part in the conversation this morning. We are keeping an eye on Vitukwa ground. As soon as any news breaks, we will bring it to you. But I want to make way for the morning fix with Mariam Bishar. But before then, allow me to thank Advice Mundalo Nuruddin, Hagai, Omwami himself, David Oyola, for joining us this morning. Now, I've looked at the Nation FM Twitter account, and they're telling us it's a showdown on today's Music Machine. In one corner, we have I Like to Move It by Real to Real, and in the other corner, we have Yala Goodbye by Sama and Gringo. But the song I'm voting for is this one by Pushman, Cannot Be Me. All right, you guys, see you on Monday.